Hi everyone, you're watching Trade Australia. I'm your host, Lawrence Christoffelsz. Today's episode is all about trade and investment opportunities with the USA. There's so many great opportunities that Australia's always looked to Asia a lot, but we've sort of forgotten in many recent years about the massive opportunity that lies with the US market. So we've got a range of expert guests on the show today to talk to you about tips and advice and how they've succeeded in the US market and how we can help you get inspired and motivated to give the US market a go as well. So first and foremost, we're going to be joined by Trena Blair, who's the CEO of FD Global Solutions. Thanks so much for joining us, Trena.
Thanks, Lawrence. Great to be here.
Great. So, Trena, look, first and foremost, before we kick into the US, please tell us about FD Global and your background.
Thank you. So I started FD Global Connections in 2014. Before that, I had an international executive career and I lived and worked in the United States. I lived over there, worked for a major global multinational, and I launched product as well as supported those products with marketing right across the Americas. And that gave me a really interesting insight, which was how complex the US market is. So when I returned to Australia, I started FD Global, and my very first client was an organization that needed somebody to help them establish their office in New York. I did that, leveraging all of the knowledge that I had in launching a product and the marketing that goes with that. And that organization has gone on to be very, very successful. Yeah. And since then, I've worked with many industries, many clients, and thoroughly enjoy getting to know the businesses and helping them connect into my deep and broad network in the US.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for it. Well, you mentioned something there about the complexity of the US market. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is that, yes, people think of a country as the US as one market, but, it's very different right across the US, those 50 states, and, from New York to California and everywhere in between. There's so many variations of what consumer demographics there are, what will sell in different ways. So can you, what do you sort of see as some of those nuances?
Oh, it is very different. So, and you're right, Lawrence, that a lot of companies come to me saying we're going to launch in the US, and I ask them very directly, well, whereabouts? And there's a quizzical look on their face because they don't realize actually that the US is made up not only of one market, but 50 markets. Every state is different, from business culture, legislation, tax for every state is different. So what you need is an expert who understands those nuances. But let me give you a really great example around tax. So there is a federal tax rate at 21%. If I go into California, then there's going to be a state tax. Then I could go into one of the counties, let's say Orange County. There could be a county tax. There could be a city tax. So in fact, just in California, you could have 4 different levels of tax, and that's not unusual. Wow. So that's an example of the complexity of the US market.
And that sounds like one of those things that you just never even imagine when you're trying to look at. From my background, supply chain logistics, we try and do things like landed costings to get product off the boat into a wharf and ready for distribution. But then all those other additional inland requirements and local legislative and taxing requirements have to be factored in. So yeah.
Absolutely, Lawrence. It's very complex. Tax is just one example. Legislation is different across the different states as well. Culture, language is very different across each of the states. So businesses must know that, again, it's not one market, it's 50 markets, and you need to understand those. Yeah.
And I think that's why companies really need to reach out to people like yourselves to get that expertise and knowledge, because, one of my next questions for you is what are the common mistakes? And obviously with that lack of preparedness, lack of research about their product, even their distribution or market selection within the US sounds like a lot of those. But what are some of the common mistakes you see, Trena?
Yeah, that's primary. Number one, Lawrence, is the lack of preparation. In fact, 70% of Australian companies that launch into the US actually fail. Wow. And when I look into why that is, it's purely because they've not done their research. They've not done their market entry strategy. They've not really thought about the complexities of the market that they're going into. They've not put a budget together that's going to sustain them for a period of time before they win those all-important contracts and drive that important revenue. They don't know their scalability ability. And so making sure that they are scalable to go into the US, looking at supply chains that you mentioned around their capacity to support your business going into the US. So these are all the areas which businesses must look at well before they scale into the US. The other really important piece, which can be done at any time, is really informing the business owners, the directors, around their responsibilities as directors. And that, again, I'm going to talk about tax. So that will even include things like your personal tax liabilities as a director of a US business, even if you're based in Australia. So these are areas which businesses need to ensure that they understand before they launch into the US. I do get calls from businesses that have launched and they've got themselves into a lot of problems because whether it's with the IRS or other organizations, compliance, governance, and they just don't know what to do next. So going in well prepared is one of the most common pitfalls.
Yeah, no, look, it makes so much sense, Trena. I think, and as you pointed out, again, from a logistics supply chain, my background, I know that there's a lot of sanctions, there's a lot of complexity around even the channel of funding that some companies have to go through and demonstrate to entities in the US about where their funding sources and so forth come from. So that there's a lot of complexity just in that, right?
There is indeed. And even where, if there are raw materials being shipped into the US, into a manufacturing plant, so where are they coming from? Do you have to get certificates and licenses for that? So it's starting a new business, essentially. What I tell a lot of my clients is that you have to think of yourself as a startup when you go into the US. And, you know, for businesses that are well established, that takes them back, you know, many years and many horror dreams, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, you know, you've really got to go back to basics and just tick all these boxes before you go in there, spend a lot of money, make lots of mistakes. So do your research, do your strategic planning around all those different elements.
Yeah, and leverage expertise. I think, you know, that's a really important part. And one of the things, Trena, what I've observed over many years of dealing with companies who are looking for overseas markets is that budget thing you mentioned, you know, they do look at non-English speaking countries as harder, and they think, oh yeah, well look, if we go to places like the UK or US, they're just like us. They should buy like us. They should understand the way we do business. So there's this misperception that you don't need a bigger budget, which is wrong because it is it's very different. The buying demographics, the consumer trends are very different. Even the way they expect their products to be delivered. So it is a often common mistake for Australian companies to think that when they look at it, non-English speaking countries, they're prepared to give it a bit more time. Do you find that as well, that a lot of companies look at the US and think it should be a quicker win than it really will be?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we grew up on the Fonz and Happy Days, didn't we? So of course we know the US. We know their language, we know how they work, we know their humour, but actually we don't. We speak UK English, they speak American English. And when you're reading through contracts, as an example, they're very different. The way that they're written is very different. Even though it's English, it is very different. And so this is where you do need to get that expert advice and making sure that those who you do seek to give that advice understand the market and they understand these nuances. So yes, even as basic things like language are very different. And speaking of product value propositions, there really isn't a customer that I've worked with that we've done the research on their product and their market fit for their product. There isn't a customer that I've worked with that hasn't had to tweak their product in some way to meet the buyer behaviour of the US market.
No, it's a great insight. And just finally, Trena, what, you know, you I know you deal with both products and service businesses. What do you see emerging as some really hot opportunities for Australian companies to think about? Which industry sectors?
Yeah, I'm seeing 4 areas where, particularly at the moment with COVID, are really emerging as strong industries for Australian companies to take advantage of. And a lot of it is built on trust. So if your value proposition can link to your solution in terms of a trusted way and build that into your messaging, then that's an important element to consider. But in terms of specific industries, health tech, med tech, these are massive opportunities in the US, and Australia has a remarkable reputation for health tech, med tech services, products and solutions in the US. Healthy food and beverage. Again, Australia has a very good reputation for healthy living, lifestyle, open spaces. And what I'm seeing is that food and beverage businesses, alternative meat businesses are ones that are really winning in the US at the moment. The other one is around online retail. And I know retail particularly has taken a hammering here in Australia, your traditional walk-in stores. Actually, online retail is emerging very strongly. So people are wanting to buy, they need their services. We need shoes, products, we need makeup, we need all sorts of different things. And online channels are the winners at the moment. And the last piece is digitizing. There's been a rapid movement towards digital solutions. We've all felt it within our own businesses. So cyber, manufacturing, so digitizing any of those service-based or product-based companies is vitally important and growing. One example, really great example, is insurance company actually. So what is traditionally taking large US insurers 2, 3, 4 years to digitize their services is now taking them 3 or 4 months.
Wow, massive
So if there are
difference.
businesses in that space, take advantage of that.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Trena, and your advice and expertise. I definitely encourage all of you out there who are considering the US market, do yourself a favour, as they used to say, reach out to experts such as Trena. She can really fast track your success and really reduce risk for going to that market. And those complexities are very real in the US. And we really encourage you. We want you to succeed, as all Australian companies should be expanding themselves and rebooting, if you like, after COVID. So thanks so much, Trena. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Great. Thank you, Lawrence. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Great. I'll speak to you soon. So you've just heard from Trena Blair there. Coming up after the break, we've got an actual case study who's gone over to the US, and they're going to tell you all about their journey and how it all began with Minnow Designs. So stick around. We'll see you straight after this break. Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Trade Australia. I'm your host, Lawrence Christoffelsz. Today's episode's all around doing business with the US market and how Australian companies should be looking at the US as a great opportunity. And now joining us on this show is Lorraine Cherry-Nguyen from Minnow Designs, who's actually been there, done that, and she's gone and succeeded in the US market. So we're going to sort of tap into her experience and get her to inspire all of you to launch into the US. So thanks so much, Lorraine, for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Lorraine, before we kick into the US, tell us about Minnow Designs and how it all came about.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So at Minnow Designs, we create water play, shoes, sandals, and dry bags for children, with the idea that these products will make a family day out more fun for kids and easier for parents.
Yep.
So my co-founder Stacey and I, we came up with the concept whenever we had toddlers ourselves, and we were at the beach one day. The sand was scorching hot, there were sharp shells everywhere, and we spent the whole time sort of chasing the toddlers, consoling them, and it wasn't the relaxing afternoon that we were hoping for. And it was at this point, Stacey and I sort of wondered, well, there's lots of sun hats out there for kids, there's swimsuits for kids, but there's actually nothing on the market for their feet. And with Stacey's vast experience in marketing and my background in fashion design, we decided sort of then and there to solve this problem and put our skill sets together and come up with Minnow.
Congratulations. Look, they're beautiful designs, and I love the marketing. It looks really great, and I can see why you succeeded, not just in Australia, but globally. And it's a great credit to yourself, both of you. So congratulations. Now, I wanted to ask you as well, Lorraine, so exporting, was that part of your strategy from the outset, or was that something that just emerged as part of the business growth? How did exporting come onto the table?
Look, Lawrence, to be honest, in the early days, we were both mums with 2 young kids, and we were just very much concentrating on the domestic market in Australia and just getting up and running. So we started off with e-com and with wholesaling through trade shows to Australian retailers. But we very quickly realized that it wouldn't take long until we hit a ceiling in Australia. It's a small market. There was only so much we could do. And also our products are very seasonal. So we were running into very quiet times in winter, and at this point, we knew there was a market for the products. They were doing well, and we knew that we just had to start thinking about exports. So that's when we started to sort of look around at various countries and think about where we could go next.
Well, that leads me to our next question, Lorraine. So how did you identify which markets you wanted to go to? I mean, it makes so much sense about the seasonality and that opportunity offshore. But how did you pick which markets were the right ones for Minnow?
Well, it was very difficult. So in the early days, it was Stacey and I sitting in a room over a cup of coffee going, what country should we go to? But we were lucky because we were actually starting to get traction from the US. We were starting to see international sales coming through the website. And, we'd been to the US. We thought culturally it was probably an easy fit. Obviously, there's no language barrier. I'd worked in fashion before and had traveled a lot to the US. So we thought, and California, seemed like a good fit with Australia, with Sydney. So we were like, US just felt right, but we still weren't sure. So we decided that we would just test the water out a little bit. And we got together a production run and took a punt. We sent it over to the US. We launched in Amazon. Very small, 2 colors, kept it simple, and it actually did really, really well. It sold out faster than what we expected, so we knew there was an appetite for the product. And I guess that was our first step, but then after that, we had to work out how to get that product in front of buyers and into retailers and sort of into the wider market. Yeah.
And I mean, that sounds like a great fit, as you say, with the California lifestyle, very similar to Australian beach lifestyle. How does it compare to other markets? I know you're not just in the US, but how does it compare to other markets that you're already
in? I would say US was a difficult market to get into because there's still a lot to learn and a lot to understand, but it's not as difficult as some other markets. So we spent a lot of time last year looking at China specifically because again, we had a lot of traction with Chinese living in Australia buying our products. Daigaos were buying in large quantity, and we were like, okay, this is something we really need to look at here. And we spent a lot of time looking at China, but there's complexities there from cultural differences, language differences, just governance, there's a lot going on. So we sort of reined that back in again whenever US started to pick up. We raised money last year. We were able to invest a lot of money into going to the US. So we shifted from China to the US, but we have other markets that are easier. For instance, New Zealand has been very easy for us, and the UAE, and we've had interest from Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, and that's actually interesting because they like our product as it is. They come to us and they just buy it. So that's nice.
It's an easy sale.
America requires a little bit more work. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's some really great points you make there, Lorraine, because America is a lot more complex than most people realize. And that leads me to how did you go about and who helped you in trying to navigate that market entry and all the complexities of the market?
Well, after we did that sort of soft launch into the US, we then went to a trade show. So again, Stacey and myself just picked ourselves up and went over to Las Vegas and thought, hey, we'll just do it the way we do it in Australia. We'll rock up at a trade show and we'll be nice and everyone will buy our product. But again, that's when we started to learn that the US is very different. The business practices are very different. The retail landscape is very different. And we actually had a lot to learn about getting our business ready to get into the US. So we made sales there. The product was really well received, but again, we needed an expert to really guide us. And after we came back from that show, coincidentally, a sort of a mutual acquaintance introduced us to Trena from FD Global Connections, and that was a really a pivotal point in our business growth. Trena is an expert in all things US, and we introduced her at just the right time to join her New York immersion program, which saw us with her expertise, be able to evaluate our business to make sure that we were equipped with the right tools to scale into the US. She took us over to New York for the most amazing week, where we networked with people that we wouldn't even imagine we would ever meet. The experience we gained was invaluable. And then when we came back to Australia, there was a whole mentoring program that helped us sort of build our plan to sort of navigate those tricky times getting into the US and other markets. So I think really getting an expert on board that knows the country, that can guide you is crucial.
Yeah, well, I wanted to wrap up by asking you, Lorraine, what your tips and advice would be to companies who are considering the US, who may think it's probably an easier market than it really is. What tips and advice or lessons learned would you sort of like to share with them?
Look, I would say America is an exciting market. It's definitely somewhere you want to be, but you have to understand which part of America you want to target. It's a very, very large place. Be specific, because it varies greatly state to state. Also, boots on the ground. Americans really, especially because you're a country you're coming from an overseas country, they really value seeing you employing somebody over there, so that they know that you're there for the long haul and that you're serious. And they also want to be able to have people there that they can communicate daily, rather than having to navigate sort of time differences and all of that. That makes things very, very difficult. So, we recently have employed a large sales team in the US, and that's just changed everything for us.
Great. No, it's some valuable advice, and I think what you're saying there, Lorraine, having the local knowledge and local communication capacity, that customer service in any market now is becoming increasingly your make or break. If you've got the right people on the ground who can service customers in the right timely manner, then it really makes you succeed. So congratulations on everything you've done so far with Minnow, you and Stacey, and thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your journey and experience with our viewers, and best of luck with all the future endeavours, and hopefully we can get you on the show sometime in the future again.
That would be fantastic. Thanks very much for your time, Lawrence.
Thanks, Lorraine. Take care. You too. So you just heard from Lorraine Cherry-Nguyen from Minnow Designs, and she's really given you some great experiential advice about how you should be able to succeed in the US market. So get that advice, tap into expertise, and do your research to really succeed there. So coming up after the break, we're actually going to be joined by representatives from AMCHAM, the American Chamber of Commerce here in Australia. So stick around and we'll see you straight after this short break.
Have your products, warehousing or distribution requirements changed in the past 12 to 24 months? There's a reason the world's best companies regularly tender their supply chain services. Professional tender management ensures you're getting the best pricing and solutions available for your business. ATLC delivers customized tender management programs for freight forwarding, warehousing, and distribution services. ATLC's programs deliver real and measurable results by only inviting suitable service providers to compete for your business. Simply tell us about your specific business needs. We design and manage the entire process for you. ATLC goes to market and does all the work. However, you get to make the final independent awarding decisions. Contact us today and we'll help you get the most out of your supply chain partners.
Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Trade Australia. Today's episode's all about trade and investment opportunities with the US. We've got the great privilege now of being joined by Doug Grant, who's the GM for AMCHAM in New South Wales and ACT. Thanks so much for joining us today, Doug.
Thank you very much.
Doug, just before we kick off with a couple of quick questions, please tell the viewers about AMCHAM and the programs and initiatives you offer Australian companies here.
Sure. AMCHAM Australia has a history spanning back to 1961. We represent close to 500 corporate member companies and their employees, and we assist them to connect, learn and grow through a range of initiatives and services. We have a very active events program which provides members and their guests access to key government representatives and showcases industry thought leaders and high achievers across all industry sectors, and connects them with other business leaders. We also have partnered with Sky News recently to deliver the Alliance series, which investigates the relationship between our nations.
Right.
And recent AMCHAM online events, which we have delivered, have highlighted significant developments and opportunities for business across space, the wine industry. And we'll also be delivering presentations on business resilience, cybersecurity and infrastructure, for example. And of course, talking about the upcoming US election in November.
Yep.
We also hold regular roundtable briefings on critical industry matters. We operate a number of committees which drive policy agenda to industry and government. And we run the AMCHAM Academy, which is a leadership development program for rising talent who will one day be steering the decision-making and direction of our member companies. And when travel conditions permit, we'll again conduct our vital trade missions, which seek to enhance and develop trade and investment to and from Australia. So you can see we exist for the benefit of our members and offer a full range of services to enable them to grow.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I know so many agree that AMCHAM sets the benchmark in many ways for the chambers around Australia. So congratulations on all the great work that you and the team do. And I know that you've also regularly collaborate with a lot of industry and government agencies, and you've just had a support of some findings of a study that was just released. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please, Doug?
Yeah, thank you. Yesterday we launched the report, which we commissioned with Deloitte Access Economics.
Right.
The report is titled Building Prosperity, the Importance of the United States to the Australian Economy. And in that report, it outlines in clear terms the benefit of the long and deeply entrenched alliance between Australia and the US. Some of the details within that outline that the partnership, built on trust and common economic objectives, adds $131 billion to the Australian economy, which is a direct result of US investment into Australia, equating to 7% of our GDP.
Wow. Yeah, it's an impressive report, and I think taking a little bit further from that, there's so much. It just emphasises the important role that you play and that the bilateral trade and investment relations. So congratulations on the report as well to you and the broader alliance with Deloitte on that as well.
We're very excited about the report, and it can be accessed and downloaded via our website under the Publications tab, or we can be contacted for a printed hard copy.
Fantastic. No, it's great to know, and I'm sure the viewers will reach out to you for that. So that's amcham.com.au, and you'll have all your details on this segment as well. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Doug, what about the industry sectors? I mean, there's so many shifts now across global supply chains. Which are the industry sectors that are hot at the moment for the US, and which Australian companies should be looking at?
It stands to reason. Technology is advancing at such a rapid rate, and the opportunities for business as a result are enormous. Australia is a really terrific innovator, and we're slowly becoming better at commercialising these innovations, notably in fintech, medtech, agricultural tech, defence, and digital technology services. Some of our members have significantly expanded their activities in the US in property management and infrastructure, resources and energy, but there's also real opportunities for most industry sectors with the clever application of a service or product which offers a fresh solution.
Yeah.
Digital capabilities have made expansion and service delivery far easier. So mapping out the right market and operational approach for your business is critical to the successful expansion into the US.
Thanks, Doug. So I want to also ask about the US over the last few years have made a deliberate move towards back into domestic manufacturing and really bringing things back in-house. Now, do you believe provides opportunity for Australian companies not just to export finished goods, but potentially work in partnership and provide some input materials or input componentry for those supply chains within the US?
Absolutely. The COVID-19 crisis has highlighted some of the very real shortcomings in our local supply chain structure for many of our businesses. And the reliance on some manufacturing centres has also proved those shortcomings. This has forced us to look at local manufacturing capabilities in Australia and potential opportunities, and also alternative markets for the supply of materials and products, very much as the US has done. The federal Australian government has established a task force which is investigating Australia's manufacturing industry. And one of the things we've noticed is that diversification of supply chain will be critical to lift Australia out of the economic crisis and create employment opportunities locally. This will generate export dollars and a very strong value add to our economy. We've seen, for example, local gin distillers pivot to manufacture hand sanitizer, or engineering firms switch production to manufacture componentry for respirators. So this proves the viability of value-add capability across some of our sectors. Opportunity exists more widely across our manufacturing industries. This needs some incentives to support this diversification to continue.
Fantastic. Look, I think that there are, as you say, some great opportunities for Australian companies to rethink those global supply chains and reach out to yourself and your team to identify some of those opportunities. What do you see for the future of trade and investment? I know that, as they say, nothing will ever be the same from a global supply chain or economy point of view. What do you see, Doug, about the future of trade and investment between US and Australia specifically?
The alliance between Australia and the US will see investment and trade continue to grow strongly. In a presentation yesterday, Ambassador A.B. Culverhouse noted that investment represents trust and represents a long-term commitment to partnership. He also noted that Australia will never see the day when a United States ambassador threatens to withdraw from trading and with investing in Australia. So there's a very real dedication to ensure the success of our partnership and to ensure that it continues. 100 years of mateship is a very real factor between our two countries. Economic security is national security. And trade, investment, security, employment and stability are the bedrock which ties our two nations together.
Very well said, and totally agree with you, Doug. And look, it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you on the show. Thank you for taking the time out. I know how busy it's been for you with the recent report, and we really appreciate that. We encourage all of you as viewers, you know how important the US is. Doug just reiterated that, as well as our other guests. And we encourage you to reach out to AMCHAM. They've got a fantastic range of programs and support initiatives and a great team of people who can really help you navigate and guide your dealings with the US and the Australia trade relationship. So thanks again, Doug. Wishing you all the very best and look forward to staying in touch and having you on the show in the near future again.
Thank you very much, Lawrence.
Thanks, Doug. Take care. Stay safe. Thanks for watching, everyone, today. I think hopefully you found it beneficial, educational, and really useful for you looking at the US market. They're such a powerhouse, they can't be ignored, and we really need to, as everyone reshapes their global supply chains and trade opportunities, it's time to rethink that opportunity with the US once again. So reach out to all those experts that you heard on today's episode. We'll have all the details for you, and best of luck. We look forward to seeing you again at our next show next week. Take care. Cheers.